Struggling caregiver discovers an incredible secret. Elderly woman's son is a CEO millionaire. Emily, a compassionate caregiver in the heart of Maplewood, was known for her unwavering spirit amid life's storms. Each day, as she entered the quaint, time-worn house of 84-year-old Margaret, the two women forged a bond deeper than blood. Emily brought laughter that echoed off the walls, warmth that made the chill of winter bearable, and the smell of savory meals simmering on the stovetop. But beneath her cheerful demeanor lay a heart burdened by the weight of financial struggles. Balancing multiple part-time jobs while devotedly caring for Margaret felt like climbing a mountain without a summit. As snow blanketed the town each winter, Emily noticed Margaret's isolation grow thicker. The elderly woman, once vibrant with stories of her youth as a World War II veteran, often stared longingly out the frosted window at bustling families. No children were there to visit, no grandchildren to delight in her wisdom. Emily felt a pang of injustice that Margaret's legacy seemed forgotten, and she made it her mission to ensure that the veteran received the respect she deserved. Their afternoons were filled with shared stories, laughter, and the delightful smell of Margaret's famous homemade apple pie cooling on the kitchen counter. Yet, one fateful day, as Emily combed through Margaret's modest finances, the ordinary turned extraordinary. She discovered out-of-place accounts that led to an astonishing revelation. Margaret's estranged son was a wealthy so, living in the bustling heart of Chicago. Emily's heart raced with indignation. How could this man live in such luxury while his mother struggled in silence? Fueled by an unwavering sense of justice, Emily pressed Margaret to reach out to him. The elderly woman hesitated, fear washing over her face. Memories of heartache and betrayal lingered between them like a distant storm cloud. But Emily's gentle, nurturing encouragement turned fear into hope. "You deserve more, Margaret," she whispered. "Don't let the past keep you from a future together." Before they could confront him, Emily reminded both women of the power of forgiveness. Stepping into the bustling city and facing a man who once walked away was daunting. Tension thickened the air as they met him in a glass-walled office, his sharp demeanor contrasting with the soft vulnerability of his mother. Their eyes locked, fragments of a shared past hung unspoken between them. "Why didn't you come back?" Margaret's voice quavered, revealing years of heartache. "I needed you." The son, defensive yet guilty, flinched at her words, grappling with a past filled with misunderstandings. Emily stood between them, her heart racing as the conversation ignited a storm of accusations and wounds. But slowly, the unspoken fears grew tangible. "Can we break this wall?" Emily dared to ask, her voice a bridge of emotion. As the layers of resentment peeled away, the son broke down, revealing insecurities of feeling unworthy. If wealth couldn't bridge their chasm, perhaps love could. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But just as they began to consider a way forward, the air crackled with unease. The son's gaze darted to the ground, littered with unspoken words and buried emotions. Would he choose redemption or let the weight of his past suffocate the chance at rekindling their bond? The question lingered, heavy and electric, poised to shatter the silence of the old office. Would love pull them together or let them slip away once more? The silence hung in the air like a thick fog, pressing down on everyone in the room. Margaret's heart raced, each beat an echo of years spent hoping for reconciliation. She searched her son's face for a sign of recognition, a flicker of the child she once cradled in her arms. Instead, she saw only a stranger, a man defined by business suits and boardroom battles. "Mom," he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know how to come back. Things got complicated." Emily took a step closer, sensing that delicate balance of vulnerability drowning in the sea of regret. "Complicated can be worked out," she urged, locking eyes with each of them. "But first, you have to face it together." Margaret shifted in her seat, her voice trembling but resolute. I spent years wondering why you left. Did I not love you enough? Was I not enough? The son's face twisted in guilt, and for a moment, he looked as if he might crumble under the weight of her words. It wasn't to you. I was afraid that I'd never be good enough for you. I thought it was better to stay away. Emily's heart ached for Margaret, watching as her eyes glistened with unshed tears. Would they find common ground? Would his admission bring healing or deepen the chasm? But I needed you, Stephen, Margaret said softly, words barely above a whisper. I needed you more than anything, especially after your father. A shadow passed over her face, bringing with it the scars of loss. Emily felt the air shift, drawing them into the inheritance of shared pain, a wound that needed more than just acknowledgement. It needed healing. With a determined breath, Emily broke through the tense atmosphere. You both need each other. You can't change the past, but you can build something new. Stephen looked at Emily as if seeing a lifeline for the first time. But where do we start? His voice trembled, revealing uncertainty beneath the facade of a successful businessman. Start with honesty, Emily replied. And maybe, with forgiveness. What if you shared your hardest moments? What if you talked about the love that was always there, even in silence? The suggestion hung between them, laden with possibility. Margaret nodded, her resolve strengthening. I want to understand you. I want to see who you are now. Let us not let fear take us away again. The son's expression transformed, a glimmer of hope shining through his previously pained features. I'll try. I'm not the man I was back then, but I want you to know me. Margaret wiped a tear that escaped the corners of her eyes. And I want to know you too. As they each inched closer to the fragile bridge they were building, the atmosphere shifted again, a familiarity blooming. Emily, her heart swelling with fulfillment, felt like a guardian angel in this tender moment. But before they could fully embrace this new chapter, the phone buzzed fiercely in Stephen's pocket. He glanced down, his face immediately changing. I have to take this. It's urgent. As he excused himself to the corner of the office, Emily turned to Margaret. Do you think he'll come back? Margaret smiled sadly, a myriad of emotions flickering in her eyes. With some hope, I believe he will. Emily watched him leave, anticipation mingled with anxiety. Would he choose to return, or let the pressures of his world pull him away yet again? Behind her back, a suggestion skimmed the air, reconciliation or temptation. The clock ticked louder, reminding them that choices were unfolding every moment. What lay ahead could unravel all they had begun to mend, or bring the kind of love they had both longed for. Let us wait, Emily whispered, glancing toward the door he had just exited. Whatever happens, we're in this together. A silence lingered, thick with tension and unwritten possibilities, leaving them to wonder if this moment was merely a pause before an inevitable storm. Would they be able to weather it together? Time stood still as Margaret and Emily exchanged glances, a kaleidoscope of emotions swirling around them. The door remained ajar, leaving behind the echo of Stephen's footsteps. Margaret's heart thudded painfully in her chest, each beat a reminder of the moments lost to misunderstandings and silence. What if he doesn't come back? She breathed, staring into her own depths of fear and longing. Emily leaned in closer, her voice a gentle caress against the weight of Margaret's worry. He is struggling too, Margaret. This is hard for him, but you showed him that it's worth it to try. Margaret closed her eyes, the memories of better times flooding her mind. Birthday parties, prom nights, even that time Stephen surprised her with breakfast in bed. A tickle of joy mixed with sorrow. Then, she remembered the fragments of their last conversations, shouting matches and tearful goodbyes. Could those painful moments ever fade into the background? I hope he remembers that, Margaret finally said, feeling the cracks in her heart. About the love beneath all the pain. I wish we could just wipe away the years. There is no magic eraser for all of that, Emily replied. But you have a chance now. You're opening that door again. Just hang on to that, no matter what. Moments ticked by, stretching like taffy in the warm air. The silence thickened, intensified by Margaret's own thoughts spiraling down a path of uncertainty. What if he chose to stay away? What if he felt the pull of his world too strongly to resist? Those fears trickled into her mind like shadows under a closed door, but she quickly shook them off. Suddenly, the door swung open. Stephen stepped back in, the urgency still etched in his brow. But there was something different about him. A fight in his eyes. I'm sorry for the interruption. Margaret held her breath, desperately grasping for a thread of optimism. Is everything okay? He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, glancing between the two women. No, it's not okay. There's a crisis at the firm. I need to leave. The discomfort in his voice was palpable, but it's more complicated than that. What do you mean? Margaret's pulse quickened, dread creeping back in. Some decisions at work are pulling me in opposite directions. I can't let you down, Mom, but I also. His eyes locked on hers, revealing a flicker of vulnerability. I also can't walk away from my responsibilities. They feel suffocating. Understanding flickered in Emily's heart. She could see what Stephen was battling with, an internal storm of duty and love. What if you could find a way to juggle both? She asked, injecting a glimmer of hope into the oppressive atmosphere. You just discovered your past. Don't lose it again to your obligations. Margaret took a step closer, grounding herself firmly. You don't have to choose one over the other, Stephen. You can bring both parts of your life together. His eyes widened slightly, as if the concept was blurring the lines between his two worlds. I don't know if I can, he started, but Margaret could see he was beginning to contemplate. You won't know until you try, Margaret said. Her voice steadied, fortified by love and a sense of possibility. A glimmer of determination appeared behind his hesitation. You're right. I need to be honest with them and with myself. I can't leave you behind again. As hope blossomed between them, the phone buzzed again in Stephen's pocket. He hesitated before checking it, the urgency rising in his eyes. Mom, I might need to go, but I really want to keep talking. Can we do this more? Yes, Margaret said, her own heart racing with renewed purpose. But only if you let me in on your life. I want to understand all of you. Stephen nodded, a resolute look forming as he promised. We will, I swear. But before they could fully bask in the new light of their connection, there was an unexpected knock on the door. All three turned, hearts pounding as they shared the unspoken fear that what lay beyond could threaten the fragile thread they had begun to weave. Who's there? Emily asked, breathless, as silence enveloped them. Once more, the question hung heavy in the air. Was this another barrier or an opportunity for deeper understanding? A thin thread waiting to be pulled, unraveling yet another layer of the truth. The seconds stretched out, each heartbeat echoing louder than the last. Margaret's instincts kicked in, flooding her thoughts with questions while unease twisted her stomach. Is it someone from work? She whispered, her eyes darting to Stephen. He shook his head, his expression switching from uncertainty to cautious curiosity. I don't think so. I didn't tell anyone I was coming back here. Emily shifted nervously. Should we open the door? Margaret hesitated. If it were someone bound to disrupt the fragile moment they'd just begun crafting, she wanted nothing to do with it. But there was a pull, an undeniable urge to know who was on the other side. A second knock, firmer this time, shattered the tension hanging like a thick veil around them. With a deep breath, Margaret stepped forward, her hand hovering over the doorknob. Maybe we should just see, she said, though doubt clawed at her tone. Mustering her resolve, she twisted the knob and pushed the door open. The sight that greeted them sent a wave of disbelief crashing over Margaret. Standing there, wide-eyed and breathless, was Claudia, Margaret's estranged sister. Claudia, Margaret gasped, stunned. The last time she laid eyes on her sister had been at their father's funeral, a day marked by ice-cold exchanges and unresolved animosities. What are you doing here? Claudia stammered, her cheeks flushed. There was a hint of regret in her voice. I got a call from Dad's lawyer. He said something urgent was happening. Her gaze swept over the room, landing on Stephen before returning to Margaret. When I found out you were back, I didn't know what else to do. Margaret's heart ricocheted in her chest. What kind of urgent matter could possibly warrant Claudia's unexpected visit? More importantly, why this day when so much had shifted for her already? Stephen's brows knitted together, aware of the history between the two women that was more complicated than either of them cared to unpack in this moment. Maybe we should sit down, Emily suggested, her voice carrying a note of caution. She sensed the pending storm and tried to usher them back toward a calmer ground. No, we can't brush this aside. Claudia's tone sharpened, her anxiety surfacing. You need to understand. There is something important about the estate. Estate? Margaret echoed blandly, feeling the walls of her world start to tilt again. The last thing she wanted was to re-enter that tangled territory. Yet, curiosity tugged at her, weaving through painful memories of their family history. Someone else is involved. Someone I hadn't expected, Claudia said, pausing for effect. Her gaze shifted to Stephen. I think you need to hear this too. What do you mean? Stephen asked, bewildered. Claudia inhaled sharply. You're not just your dad's son. You have a half-brother, and he's in line for a share of everything. The words hung in the air like a heavy fog. Margaret's brain spun as denial battled with the reality crashing over her, washing away the serene moment she'd lost only moments before. Could this really be true? Tension escalated as the implications settled in. This revelation had the power to change everything, rippling through their newly rekindled connection and turning it on its head. What does this even mean for us? Stephen whispered, eyes wide, confusion battling against disbelief. Margaret felt the ground beneath her twist again, uncertainty gnawing at the edges of her hope. Could this divide them even further? Could it unravel everything she'd just started to rebuild? An insistent ringing broke through the thick silence. Someone's phone buzzed insistently, a stark reminder of the world outside. Do we even want to know? She asked, her voice trembling with the weight of the unknown. And as they stood there, caught in a web of old wounds and new truths, the realization settled in one answer would only lead to more questions. What else lay hidden in the murky depths of their family history? What truths remained to be uncovered? With clenched fists and racing hearts, they all knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning. The air weighed heavy with silence, thickening the tension. Claudia's words echoed in Margaret's mind, drowning out all other thoughts. A half-brother? The idea felt like a sting, igniting a swarm of emotions: betrayal, confusion, frustration. She felt as if the ground beneath her was slipping away, the world tilting at an odd angle. Are you sure? She found herself asking, her voice barely a whisper. You can't just drop something like that without proof. Claudia seemed taken aback, her eyes brimming with urgency. I wouldn't. She paused, struggling to gather her thoughts. It's not just speculation. I have documents. I didn't want to believe it either, but the will it mentions him. Margaret stepped back, shaking her head slowly. Documents don't change anything. It doesn't change who I've known my whole life, the family I grew up with. Emily glanced between the sisters, sensing the mounting friction. Maybe we should sit down and discuss this. Try to understand together? No, Margaret snapped, the words bursting out of her before she could clamp down on the frustration boiling inside. She drew in a shaky breath, forcing herself to control her emotions. This is too much. We just started to rebuild, and now this? I don't want something like this to come between us. Stephen, ever the peacemaker, placed a hand on her shoulder. Let us take a step back. We can understand it together. If this is true, there may be more at stake than we realize. Claudia nodded, her voice softening as she continued. I understand your anger. I do. But we have to face this head on. It might not change our past, but it could change how we look at our future. The simplicity of her words stung. Margaret's heart pounded, a mixture of anger and the flicker of hope that something could be repaired. She felt exposed, walking the tightrope between past hurt and potential forgiveness. And what about him? She asked finally, pain lancing through her words. What if he wants a piece of what we fought for? This could tear everything we've worked for apart. Claudia shook her head. He is not some grasping stranger. He has family, and we deserve to know the truth. You don't have to like it, but you do have to face it. Margaret turned away, her mind racing as her thoughts clashed like waves against a rocky shore. Travel back to where they had been, or open up the floodgates to something new. Beneath the turmoil, a resolve grew. If we're doing this, we need to find out who he is, she said quietly, an unexpected determination shimmering in her voice. We need to know what else he knows. As if on cue, Emily's phone buzzed again, startling all of them. Maybe that's the universe giving us a nudge, she joked weakly, but her attempt at humor fell flat amidst the tension. Let us see who it is, Stephen said, his curiosity piqued. Emily pulled out her phone, glancing at the screen. It's the lawyer's office. They're calling me back. Take it. We need all the information we can get right now, Margaret urged. Emily nodded and moved to a corner, her voice dipping into the distance as she answered. Behind her, Margaret locked eyes with Claudia. What if this changes everything? What if we let him in? Claudia's expression softened. Then we'll face it together. We've always been stronger that way. Margaret hesitated, then took a deep breath. The resolve felt fragile, yet powerful. She was ready to face this twist in their story, even if it felt like stepping into the unknown. Emily returned a moment later, her brows furrowed. They want us to come to the office tomorrow. There's more we need to discuss about the estate. Margaret's heart raced, apprehension creeping back in. The path ahead seemed murky. Do we really want to dig deeper? What if we find more than we bargained for? And as uncertainty settled in, it became clear that opening that door had unleashed more than just the past. With the weight of tomorrow pressing down, they stood on the brink of revelation. What truth lay waiting for them behind the lawyer's office door? Would they emerge united or forever altered? The answers were just within reach, pulling them toward destiny whether they were ready or not. The morning arrived cloaked in a veil of gray, clouds spilling their burden as if reflecting the weight in Margaret's heart. The air felt charged with possibilities, each tick of the clock building anticipation before the meeting at the lawyer's office. She stared out the window, watching raindrops race each other down the glass, her mind a tempest of anxiety and hope. Are we really ready for this? She murmured, more to herself than to the sisters sitting across the table. Emily and Claudia exchanged glances, the shared tension between them palpable. You said you wanted to know the truth, Claudia replied quietly, the gentleness in her voice juxtaposed with the sharpness of the day. We can't go back now. This is the only way forward. But what if that truth changes everything? Margaret's question hung in the air, heavy and unyielding. She felt like a tightrope walker, each step forward a risk of falling into chaos. The trio moved toward the law office, the rain providing a backdrop, each drop a reminder of the emotional storm brewing within Margaret. Her heart hammered faster with every step away from their past and into the unknown. As they entered the office, the sterile environment felt suffocating. The smell of fresh coffee mingled with the scent of new paper documents that might hold answers, but also deepen divides. The lawyer, an older man with a careful demeanor, gestured toward a table at the far end of the room. Thank you for coming, he began, his voice clipped. I know this is a lot to handle. Margaret sat, her fingers trembling slightly on the edge of the table. She caught a glimpse of Claudia and Emily, their faces mirroring her fear and curiosity. They were in this together, for better or worse. Let us get straight to it, the lawyer said, his gaze shifting to a stack of papers before him. As you know, the will indicated the existence of a half-brother. His name is Jacob Dunn. He handed them a document. This is his information. Margaret's breath caught in her throat as she unfolded the paper. The name, Jacob Dunn, sparked an array of questions. Was this man a threat? A potential ally? Or something they never knew they needed? He's in his 30s, lives in Atlanta, and already has a family of his own, the lawyer continued, oblivious to the whirlwind in the room. He was unaware of his connection to you until recently. His mother hold on, Margaret interrupted, finding her voice. You mean he didn't even know about us? How is that possible? The lawyer hesitated, choosing his words carefully. His mother may have chosen to keep that part of her life private. There are complexities in relationship histories, but Jacob is very much interested in reaching out. Interest rippled through Margaret. Was this man seeking to connect? Or did he want something from them? Her heart wrestled with the emerging hope that perhaps this connection could mend the rifts instead of deepening them. What if we meet him? Emily suggested, her voice steadying the shaky air around them. Maybe it could lead to something good. Margaret's mind raced with possibilities. Just when they had begun to find their feet after so much turmoil, a new chapter was unfolding. But what if it turns into a disaster? What if he wants our we won't know unless we try? Claudia interrupted, putting a firm hand on Margaret's arm. The solidarity was comforting, but the trepidation remained. The lawyer cleared his throat. I would recommend approaching this cautiously. Emotions are high, and the family dynamics are still fragile. Taking a deep breath, Margaret felt the weight of those words. Treading softly meant navigating through past hurts and the rawness of truth, but she felt a flicker of something. Could it be hope? All right, let us meet him, Margaret said, her voice firmer than she felt inside. But we need to set boundaries. As the meeting wrapped up, the trio walked from the lawyer's office into the soft drizzle outside. The tension in the air, though still present, shifted slightly. There was a new path ahead, one they hadn't anticipated. Margaret felt her heartbeat steady just a little as the rain fell gently around them. She didn't know what lay ahead, but for the first time since the whirlwind began, she felt like they might actually navigate this together. And just as her spirits began to lift, a notification on Emily's phone caught her attention. The screen glowed, revealing a message that made Margaret's heart skip. "It's from Jacob," Emily whispered, eyes wide in disbelief. What could he have possibly said? With their futures teetering on the edge of revelation, the tantalizing possibility of connection loomed ahead. Would it fortify their bond or lead to more turmoil? Only time would tell. Emily's hand trembled as she unlocked her phone, her eyes darting between the screen and Margaret's anxious face. The rain intensified, drumming against the pavement like a heartbeat, mimicking the rhythm of their collective anxiety. "Should I read it?" Emily asked, glancing at Claudia, who nodded, biting her lip. "Yeah, we need to know," Margaret urged, feeling a familiar surge of impatience. Her heart raced faster than the rainwater flowing down the storm drains. Emily cleared her throat, a dramatic pause that heightened the atmosphere. "Okay, here goes. Hi, Emily. I hope this message finds you well. I've been thinking a lot about our family, and I would love to meet the three of you. I'm available this weekend if that works for you. I know this is a lot, but I really want to connect." The words hung in the air, heavy and charged. Margaret felt a strange mix of dread and excitement surge within her. This weekend? That's fast. What does he want? Emily watched her, an understanding expression in her eyes. "He wants to connect, just like we do. That's a start, right?" Claudia frowned. "But we need to prepare. What do we even say to him?" There are so many emotions floating around. Margaret felt the conflict swirl inside her. On one hand, she was curious, desperate, even for a connection that could heal old wounds. On the other hand, the thought of laying their lives bare before a stranger left her feeling exposed, as if they were offering pieces of themselves to someone who may not truly understand. "We should probably talk it over first," she finally said, her voice steadying with resolve. "How do we want to approach this?" They drifted into a nearby cafe, seeking shelter from the rain. The warmth inside enveloped them, contrasting the storm outside. They settled into a small booth, the comforting smell of coffee grounding them as they huddled together, their hushed voices blending with the low hum of conversation around them. "I think we should be open with him," Emily suggested, her fingers wrapped around a steaming mug. "But we have to go in knowing what we want from this. What conversations should we initiate? What if he wants to know about our father?" Claudia interjected. "We can't just ignore that part. It's a huge part of who we are now." Margaret felt a wave of apprehension wash over her. Could they really bear to delve into the past? "We could frame it like how his arrival might change things," she proposed cautiously. "It needs to be clear that we're not here to rehash old wounds. We just want to understand what this means for us moving forward. This might be our chance to start fresh, kind of like a new beginning," Emily added, her eyes lighting up as she caught the vision. But a shadow crossed Claudia's face, a flicker of doubt mixed with hope. "Fresh is good," Claudia conceded, "but we also need to protect ourselves. We're not responsible for how he feels about this. And if things go south," Margaret nodded, "we draw that line. It's our choice to decide what to share and what feels unsafe." As they solidified their plan, Margaret felt her heart soften a little. Despite the underlying tension, the idea of meeting Jacob also brought with it a glimmer of possibility. The thought that perhaps this could lead to understanding, to something better. But just as she began to feel a flicker of hope illuminated inside her chest, a shadow flickered across the window. Margaret looked up to see a figure standing outside, rain-soaked and hesitant, staring through the glass. Her heart stopped at the sight. It was Jacob. In that moment, everything froze. Would he find the warmth he hoped to receive, or would he realize they were just as scared, just as lost? Margaret's breath quickened again as uncertainty loomed. What would happen when they finally came face to face? What was hiding behind those raindrops now pooling on the window? The path ahead seemed fraught with risk. Gathering her courage, she glanced at her sisters. "Are we ready to meet him?" And as the door creaked open, the world outside shimmered anew. Would they embrace the night ahead? Or would they stumble into old ghosts? Only the unfolding moments would tell. The door swung open, and a rush of cool air followed Jacob inside, mingling with the rich aroma of coffee and dampened sugar. He hesitated for a moment, his eyes scanning the small cafe, searching for something, maybe a sign, or the familiar warmth he had long desired. Emily gasped softly, her eyes wide. "That's him," she whispered, as if saying it louder would shatter the fragile barrier between them all. Claudia's fingers clutched Margaret's arm, her grip tight. "He looks, just breathe," Margaret interrupted, forcing herself to exhale slowly. She moved instinctively, her body rising as if pulled by an invisible string, pulling her forward. Could she actually do this? Could they? Her heart pounded a rhythm louder than the storm, each beat amplifying the weight of the moment. Jacob stepped closer, droplets of rain glistening on his dark hair. He looked tentative, unsure of himself, but hopeful, too. "Hi," he said, his voice wavering slightly as his eyes met Margaret's. "I'm Jacob." A wave of emotion washed over her. She searched his face, desperately wanting to see hope there, wanting it to match the turmoil swirling in her own chest. "Hi," she finally managed, the words slipping out like a secret. Emily stepped forward, steering the conversation. "We got your message." Her voice was steady, grounding them. "We thought we should meet." Jacob nodded, his eyes darting between the sisters as if searching for something familiar. "I know this is complicated," he began, glancing at each of their faces, "but I really want to understand. I think it's important." The cafe's buzzing noise slipped into silence around them as they took their seats. Margaret pushed her mug away, suddenly not craving the warmth of coffee as much as the warmth of connection. "Do you really think it is?" she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Yes," he replied, looking determined. "I need to know who you are, all of you. I've spent so long wondering." He glanced out the window, raindrops racing down the glass, mirroring his own stream of thoughts. "Life is short, and I don't want to waste any more of it." Margaret felt her defenses rise and fall like the ocean tide. This was their chance, she reminded herself, but doubt crept in, wrapping itself around her heart. "You don't even know us. Why do you want this?" Jacob leaned in, intense and serious. "Because I should have been there. I missed out on so much, and I want to make it right." His voice trembled with an emotion that echoed in the pit of her stomach. Claudia, who had been quiet, finally interjected with a tinge of skepticism. "What does making it right even mean? You don't know what it was like for us." Jacob opened his mouth, then hesitated, swallowed hard. The silence stretched between them, thickening like the storm outside. "Maybe you're right," he admitted, his voice lower and unsteady. "I can't change the past. I just want a chance to be part of the present." Margaret exchanged hesitant glances with Emily and Claudia. The words lingered, heavy and fraught with possibility. Could they trust him? Could they really begin anew, facing the unknown with open hearts? As they discussed their feelings, the rain continued to drum against the cafe windows, a reminder that they were standing on the precipice of change. Each sister shared their thoughts, unearthing feelings they had tucked away for far too long. But just when Margaret began to feel a kinship forming, a sudden noise interrupted. A crash echoed from the back of the cafe, startling everyone. They turned as a waitress stumbled, a tray full of beverages toppling to the floor. "Sorry," she exclaimed, flustered. Laughter erupted from another table, but all eyes went back to Jacob. He resumed his gaze, but something had changed. Uncertainty flickered across his features. "Maybe I pushed too hard." Margaret felt a spark of panic. Would this be their moment of connection shattered by chaos? Just when they seemed ready to take a step forward, reality surged in with a cold reminder of their tangled past. Could they find the courage to forge ahead, or would they retreat into their old defenses? That question hung among them like a capricious storm cloud, heavy with unspoken fears and hopes for a brighter connection. As Jacob shifted in his seat, uncertainty lining his brow, Margaret felt the gravity of the moment. Would they break through this wall together, or would they crumble under the pressure of old wounds as new ones threatened to open? The answers awaited just beyond their reach. The air in the cafe shifted, as if the storm outside had infiltrated their space, casting a shadow over their fragile gathering. Jacob's eyes darted from Margaret's tense expression to Emily's wary gaze. "I didn't mean to make it awkward," he said softly, his voice almost lost in the din surrounding them. Margaret's heart raced. She wanted to reach across the table, to pull him close and tell him it was okay, that they could navigate this together. But uncertainty anchored her in place. "It's not your fault," she said, forcing the words past a throat tight with emotion. We have a lot to unpack. Claudia, usually quick with a retort, seemed taken aback. There's just so much history. You showing up doesn't erase any of it. Her voice softened slightly. We were left to figure things out alone. Jacob sat back, taking in her words, the weight of them settling like lead in the room. I get that. He looked down, tracing patterns on the table with his finger. And I know I can't fix what has been broken. I just want to try and find some way to understand what happened to understand you. Emily's expression softened. You're asking for trust. Do you know how hard that is for us? She leaned forward, her eyes searching his. We've built walls to protect ourselves. It's hard to imagine them coming down. I'm not asking you to trust me completely. Not right away, Jacob replied earnestly. But maybe we can start with just being honest. About everything. Margaret felt the familiar burn of tears threatening to spill. This was intimacy, the kind that forged connections, but also laid bare vulnerabilities. Could they really dive into that darkness together? What do you want to really know? She asked, her voice trembling, both scared and curious. There's so much, he replied, his eyes locked onto hers, piercing through her resolve. Tell me about Mom. About how she was, the woman you became because of her absence. What it was like growing up. The moment lingered, taut with tension. Claudia bit her lip, glancing at Emily. It was complicated, she finally said, her voice wavering slightly. We learned to be self-sufficient, to wear smiles even when we didn't feel them. Jacob nodded, seeming to absorb her words, the weight of her childhood experiences deepening the gravity of their conversation. And between you all? He pressed gently. How did that shape you? Margaret looked from Claudia to Emily, a rush of memories filling her mind. Laughter shared, tears shed, moments of brother-sister rivalry, and the unbreakable bonds that led them to this very moment. We had to lean on each other. We were all we had. Her voice broke, revealing her vulnerability. But just then, the waiter weaved through the chaos and arrived with a fresh round of drinks. The moment shattered once again, and laughter bubbled up from a nearby table, echoing like a joyful reminder of life outside their bubble of pain. Jacob's brow furrowed as he watched the exchange, and Margaret caught that look of his, the dawning realization that this would be much harder than he anticipated. I wish I could have shared it with all of you, he finally admitted. Maybe we should share the next chapter together? Emily offered softly, tentatively extending an olive branch. One painful memory at a time. Margaret felt a glimmer of hope, warming her cold heart. Could they really open up? Could this mess somehow turn into something beautiful? But just as she was ready to embrace that idea, her phone buzzed violently on the table. The screen lit up with an unexpected message that sent a fresh wave of anxiety crashing through her. A reminder of unfinished business, of complicated ties that could undo everything they were trying to build. She glanced at the screen and back to Jacob, her breath hitching in her throat as she contemplated the implications of the incoming message. Would it pull them apart before they even got to choose each other? What if the very connection they were attempting to forge was at risk of being severed before it even had a chance to begin? Margaret's heart sank as she felt the weight of uncertainty crushing in around her. The message on her phone was a reminder that the past had a way of creeping back into the present at the worst possible moments. Just a second, she said apologetically, as she picked up the phone and swiped the screen. The world around her faded as she read the message from her lawyer. It was about a court date regarding her family estate and the upcoming meeting concerning legal procedures. The sudden urgency threatened to unravel everything they had just begun to rebuild. Is everything okay? Emily's voice broke through the fog of her thoughts, concern lining her features. It's just some paperwork I have to deal with, Margaret said, but her voice quavered, betraying the rising anxiety she felt. It's South related to the estate. Jacob's eyes sparkled with understanding, but the heaviness in the air thickened. You don't have to worry about that right now. We can deal with all of it together, he offered, his sincerity shining like a beacon through the turmoil. But doubts crept in again. What if this affects everything we've been talking about? What if your half-brother shows up and everything goes haywire? Margaret's voice cracked slightly as the weight of her fears pressed down on her. I think it's okay to feel scared, Jacob replied thoughtfully. But we can't let fear dictate our choices. We just found a way to move forward, to really connect. Claudia chimed in. You're not alone in this, Margaret. Whatever happens with that legal stuff, We'll figure it out together. At that moment, the sincerity in her sister's eyes washed over Margaret, mixing with Jacob's determined gaze. A flicker of hope sparked, igniting a sense of unity amidst the chaos. Maybe they could face these storms as a family, despite the unexpected turbulence that lay ahead. Taking a deep breath, she spoke, "Okay, let us focus on this moment for now." The resolve in her heart steadied her voice. "We can navigate whatever twists lie ahead, but I want us to start fresh. If we're going to do this, it has to be a true beginning." Jacob smiled gently, relief washing over his features. "I'd like that." With their hearts laid bare before one another and the past haunting them less than before, the atmosphere shifted. Each of them was holding onto the shards of their experiences, but together they began to form something beautiful, like a mosaic pieced together with care and sincerity. "So," Emily said, trying to steer the conversation to safer waters, "tell us about your life, Jacob. What was it like growing up without that connection? What made you who you are?" The doorway to deeper conversation opened, and Jacob shared stories of his childhood in Atlanta, the joys and struggles, his mother's love, and the void he felt knowing there was family somewhere that he could never reach. They hung on his every word, the shared bond tightening with each revelation. Margaret felt warmth blooming inside her. Yes, this was what they needed, a chance to dig into the past to resurrect their hopes for the future. And maybe, just maybe, this was the healing they needed to transform their family, to turn fear into strength. In the midst of the heartfelt exchanges, Margaret noticed droplets of rain still racing down the cafe window, each one carrying a hint of the struggle they had faced. But she didn't feel hopelessness weighing her down anymore. Instead, there was an undeniable lightness in her chest, and for the first time, she felt a sense of possibility fluttering through. As the conversations meandered, a profound sense of understanding took root. It was as if they were unwrapping layers of protective armor while crafting a newfound closeness. They shared laughter and tears, and a bond that had been dormant for so long began to blossom. When the cafe's ambient noise began to fade into the background, an unmistakable warmth enveloped them like a hug. They didn't know exactly where the road would lead, but one thing was clear: they were no longer alone. As they prepared to leave, the shadow of uncertainty still lingered, but so did hope. They'd chosen connection. They'd chosen family. Margaret held Jacob's gaze and said softly, "I can't promise it'll be easy, but I am willing to work on this. Will you?" Jacob nodded, eyes shining with determination. "More than anything, I'm ready." As they exited the cafe, the rain eased, and a soft light peeked through the clouds. The storm outside lessened, reflecting the lightness inside them. Together, they stepped into the unknown, ready to forge a new path, hand in hand, as a family. And as they walked toward the future, Margaret knew there would be storms ahead. But they would face them together, leaning on each other, nurturing hope that had laid dormant for too long. This was only the beginning. Now, as this incredible journey concludes, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and comment below your reactions and feelings about the ending. This matters, and only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.